Good morning, Rob.
Good morning, Michelle.
Here we have a multi-base bead frame task cards. Can you tell us a little bit
Yeah,
about them?
absolutely. I would love to. That's a mouthful. The multi-base bead frame. This is one of my favorite new materials. We increasingly the content at the upper elementary and junior high level is increasing. So things like coordinate graphs is one, data collection is another, and certainly having children being able to work in different bases is another one as well. And so the multi-base bead frame is a bead frame, as you would expect. It's a flat bead frame, and so it is rather than standing up. But what it allows you to do, because on each chain, instead of stopping at 9 or 10 for a base 10, this is going up to 11, 12, 13, even 16 different beads on a wire. So certainly when I'm presenting this to adult learners, that's when they tend to get that little bit of a headache because their mind is beginning to blow, and so I think that causes a little bit of pain sometimes when you feel your brain expanding like that. And so what the task cards do, well, like any task card, they are allowing the child to work independently. Like task cards, sometimes called command cards, they're not replacing the teacher's presentation. They're not replacing the child who wants to create their own problems. And yet it provides a structure. It provides for a lot of children that, like, okay, this is what I'm going to do, this is what I'm going to do, this is what I'm going to do. It puts it in sequence. You see here that we have 6 different almost sections of learning. So it helps put a scaffolding around it. It helps put a structure around it as the child is doing it. Because there's a lot to do here. There's a lot to do with we're working with the multi-base bead frame, and a couple steps where we don't want to jump right into the operations. And we could say that about the bead frame, the checkerboard, just about any Montessori material that I can think of, especially in arithmetic. We want to show the child first, this is what the material is. And the first thing that we do with that is like, well, how can we form a quantity? Let's form a quantity, and now let's read it, and now let's write it. Now let's write it and read it, and now we're going to form it with a quantity. So we take the child through these very, very concrete things before they're begging to be able to add or subtract with it, and we're like, okay, we need to be very careful that we understand how it works, and we can make number formation and number reading is so important for children. And this is a nice reiteration of place value, and so anytime that we can go back and have a child be cognizant of both that and also give them scaffolding around mnemonic devices. This is the multi-base bead frame still uses that green, blue, red, green, blue, red, green, blue, red. So we try to make it as familiar as possible, because we're about to go far beyond what they ever thought was possible by going into something that is base 11, base 12, base 13. So the task cards, like I say, are going to support that work. And so this is another case where I don't necessarily have to do every single permutation of the multi-base bead frame before I let them loose on the task cards. I can say, okay, first we're just going to introduce the bead frame. This is how it works. This is how we're going to bring down the beads. This is how we're going to set it to base 10. This is how we're going to set it to base 12. And this is what it's going to look like. So we have a series of introductory lessons and introductory task cards that are just going to take the child through, just through that. All right, multi-base bead frame, like any bead frame, really is powers, right? When we look about the small bead frame, the top wire is units, and then it's tens, and then it's hundreds. We could also say, okay, well, that top one then is 10 to the first power, 10 to the second power, 10 to the zero power, 10 to the third power, all the way through. So the second set is just going to deal with that. We're just going to look at the bead frame as being a set of powers. From there, finally, when we get into it, now we're going to start doing addition problems with them. But even with them, all these addition problems, we're going to start with something that is no changes, right? Just like the stamp game, we had static problems and then dynamic problems where you had to make the change. Same thing here. We're going to take it really, really, really slowly. So I love, it's such an elegant way of approaching so many tasks, is letting the child get comfortable here, and then you go from that step to that step. I think Dr. Montessori made the analogy like before children can reach that very top of a very, very tall mountain, which in this case is adding in base 15, where some of the numbers are actually letters. And well, how do you get there? Well, you get there by taking a step, and then another step, and another step, and another step. So we have addition, and then we go through subtraction, and then we go through multiplication, and then we're going to finally end with probably the most complex, and I think I love it that this material, the most cards, there's something like 25 cards in that last one, is converting from one base to another. So I take a number like 12,377. Well, how do I write that's base 10? How do I write that in base 7? How do I write that in base 4? And then going vice versa. Here's a number in base 3. How do I write that in base 8? So it takes you from an introduction all the way to something that is, again, I think it's a little bit mind-blowing for both the children and honestly, the adult learners themselves.
All right, thank you so much, Rob.